Amina woke up before sunrise as she did every day. The sky was still dark and the air was cool. She quietly swept the big marble floor, washed the dishes and prepared breakfast before her employers even opened their eyes. She had worked in the mansion for 3 years, and though the work was hard, she was thankful for it. It gave her a place to sleep, food to eat, and a little money to send to her younger sister in the village. Amina was a quiet girl who never argued or complained. She always smiled, even when her body ached from long hours of cleaning and cooking. Her employers were a wealthy couple who lived in comfort. The madam, Mrs. Alayinka, liked to show off her gold jewelry and designer clothes. The master, Mr. Alayinka, was mostly away on business trips. The other maids whispered that the madam was easily angered, so Amina always tried to stay out of her way. Still, she worked hard and kept her head down. She thought that if she stayed respectful and honest, life would stay peaceful. One morning the mansion was full of noise. The madam was shouting. Her favorite gold bracelet had gone missing. The entire household was ordered to line up in the living room. One by one she questioned every maid. When Amina's turn came, the madam's eyes were already full of suspicion. "You cleaned my room last night, didn't you?" she demanded. Amina nodded nervously. "Yes, madam, but I didn't see any bracelet," she said softly. The madam's face grew cold. "Then where is it?" "You think I'm a fool?" she snapped. The other maids looked down, afraid to speak. One of them whispered something under her breath, and the madam's anger exploded. You poor village girl. You think you can steal from me?" she shouted, pointing at Amina. Amina's heart raced. She tried to explain that she had never touched anything that didn't belong to her. She begged her madam to believe her, but her words only made things worse. The madam ordered the guards to search Amina's small room. They turned her few belongings upside down: her old clothes, her worn-out slippers, and a small box where she kept her sister's letters. There was no bracelet. Still, the madam refused to listen. "I don't need proof," she said coldly. "I can see guilt in your eyes. Get out of my house before I call the police." Amina stood frozen. Her hands trembled as she looked around the house she had cleaned every day. No one spoke for her. The other maids looked away, scared to lose their jobs. Tears filled Amina's eyes, but she held them back. She packed her small bag and walked toward the door. The madam followed, shouting, "You should be ashamed. After everything I've done for you." When the heavy gates closed behind her, Amina felt a deep emptiness inside. She looked up at the big house one last time. The mansion that once gave her shelter now felt like a cage that had thrown her out. The street outside was hot, dusty and full of noise. She had no money, no home, and no one to call for help. She sat on the side of the road, clutching her bag to her chest. She could still hear the madam's harsh words echoing in her head. She had done nothing wrong, yet she was treated like a thief. The shame burned inside her, and she wondered why life was so cruel to people who tried to be good. Hours passed. The sun climbed high and her throat grew dry. Amina stood up and began to walk. She didn't know where to go, but she couldn't stay there. Every step she took felt heavy, but she kept moving. Along the way people passed by. Some looked at her with pity, others with judgment. By evening her feet were sore and her body was weak. She found a small bench near the market and sat down. She looked at the crowd, busy people selling fruits, laughing, living their lives. She wished she could disappear into that crowd and forget her pain. As the night came, she pulled her old shawl over her shoulders. The air was cold and she could hear crickets singing. She thought about her sister in the village, the letters she used to send, and the dreams she once had, to save enough money for school to build a better life. Now all those dreams felt far away. Still, deep inside, a small voice told her not to give up. She whispered to herself, "Maybe tomorrow will be better." It was a simple hope, but it kept her heart alive. That night, as she lay on the bench looking at the stars, Amina made a quiet promise to herself. She would not let this pain destroy her. She would keep her honesty, her kindness, and her courage. Even if the world turned its back on her, she would not give up. She didn't know it yet, but this painful night was only the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. She closed her eyes and tried to rest, listening to the city sounds around her, cars passing, voices fading, and the soft wind that touched her face. She whispered one last prayer for strength, and slowly drifted to sleep, not knowing that fate was already writing a new chapter for her. Amina's life changed completely after being thrown out of the mansion. The first few nights on the street were the hardest. The air was cold, and her body shivered as she tried to sleep on the hard ground near the market stalls. Her stomach growled from hunger, and sometimes tears rolled down her cheeks as she remembered the warm meals she used to cook for others. meals she was never allowed to eat in peace. Every morning before the sun rose, she woke up to the sound of vendors setting up their stalls. Some of them gave her small tasks, sweeping the floor, carrying baskets, or cleaning fruits, just so she could earn a little food or a few coins. She was always polite, always smiling even when she was tired or hungry. Her soft voice and humble nature made people notice her, but no one knew the full story of her pain. One day an old woman selling vegetables called her over. "Child, you look weak," the woman said kindly. "Here, take this yam." Amina shook her head. "I can't take it for free, Mama." The woman smiled. "Then help me arrange my stall. That's your payment." Amina agreed and spent hours working quietly. She didn't mind the heat or the dust. She was grateful to do something honest, something that reminded her of her worth. But at night, when the market closed and lights went out, loneliness returned. She sat alone watching people go home to their families. She missed having a place to belong, a roof over her head, and someone who cared. The bracelet she was accused of stealing still haunted her thoughts. Sometimes she whispered to herself, "God knows the truth. One day they will see I didn't do it." One evening, while resting near the market's corner, she saw a small boy crying. His mother had gone to sell goods and hadn't returned. The boy was scared and hungry. Without thinking, Amina tore a piece from her only bread and gave it to him. "Eat, little one," she said softly. "Your mother will come back soon." The boy smiled weakly and ate. Amina felt a small warmth in her heart. She had so little, but she could still give. Her kindness didn't go unnoticed. Some vendors began to trust her more. They let her guard their goods when they went for prayers or errands. In return, they shared their leftovers with her. Life was still hard, but she learned to survive through patience and faith. She often told herself, maybe this suffering is just a step before something good. One afternoon, rain poured heavily and everyone ran to take shelter. Amina had nowhere to go. She hid under a broken shed, clutching her torn shawl around her shoulders. Her feet were wet and cold and she sneezed from the chill. Still, she thanked God for the little roof that kept her from being completely drenched. After the rain stopped, she helped clean the market area, even though no one asked her to. She picked up fallen fruits, rearranged boxes, and swept away puddles. When one of the traders returned, she said in surprise, "You didn't have to do all this." Amina smiled weakly. "It's okay. I just wanted to help." Her gentle attitude impressed people, even though she didn't realize it. They started calling her the quiet helper. Children often ran to her for help with chores or small problems. She became like a sister to many who worked there, though she still had no home or steady job. One night, she sat under the stars, tired but peaceful. She looked at the sky and whispered, "If I could just get one chance to prove myself again, I'll never waste it." The wind blew softly and for a moment she felt like the universe had heard her prayer. A few days later, something unexpected happened. A group of men entered the market, dressed neatly in suits. They were looking for workers to help in a new event hall nearby. Many people rushed forward, shouting for attention. Amina stayed at the back, unsure if she should even try. One of the men noticed her quietness and called out, "You there, why aren't you coming?" Amina stepped forward shyly. I didn't think you'd want me, sir." The man studied her face and said, "Everyone deserves a chance. What can you do?" "I can clean, cook, and serve," she said honestly. He nodded. "Come tomorrow morning." That night, Amina couldn't sleep. She smiled for the first time in weeks, tears of hope shining in her eyes. She didn't know what kind of job awaited her, but she felt something inside her heart whisper that this was the beginning of her new life. The next morning she woke up before dawn, washed herself with cold water from a public tap, and wore her cleanest dress. As she walked to the new event hall, she prayed silently, "Please, let this be my chance." Her feet hurt and her stomach was empty, but her spirit was full of hope. When she reached the place, she was welcomed politely and given simple cleaning tasks. She worked tirelessly, moving from one corner to another, never resting. Her hands were rough and her back ached, but she smiled through it all. The supervisor noticed her dedication and said, "You work like someone who values every moment." Amina replied softly, "Every moment is a gift, sir." By the end of the day, she had impressed everyone. For the first time in a long while, she earned a proper meal and a little pay. As she sat eating rice and stew, tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Though Amina still had a long way to go, her heart was stronger than ever. She had faced rejection, hunger, and loneliness, yet her kindness never faded. She didn't know it yet, but her quiet goodness was about to lead her toward a destiny that would change her life forever. The rain poured heavily that evening, turning the roads into rivers of mud and filling the air with the scent of wet earth. Amina was walking home from her long day of work, her old umbrella barely keeping her dry. The market had closed early because of the storm, and most people were already indoors. The streets were nearly empty except for the sound of thunder rumbling in the distance. As she walked along the roadside, she noticed a black luxury car struggling to move. Its tires spun helplessly in the thick mud. The headlights blinked, cutting through the falling rain, and she could see the man inside looking frustrated. Without a second thought, Amina dropped her bag, folded her sleeves and ran toward the car. The rain slapped her face and her clothes clung tightly to her skin. Still, she pushed the car with all her strength, her feet sinking into the slippery ground. The man inside rolled down the window slightly. "Miss, you'll get hurt." "Leave it," he shouted over the rain. But Amina only shook her head. "It's okay, sir. Just try again," she called back, her voice firm yet kind. She placed both hands against the trunk and pushed harder. Her shoes were soaked and her fingers were cold, but she didn't stop. After a few more tries, the tires finally caught traction. The car jerked forward and rolled free from the mud. Amina stumbled backward, breathing heavily, her clothes completely drenched. The driver immediately stepped out, holding an umbrella. He was tall, well-dressed, and his face showed both surprise and gratitude. "You actually did it?" he said with a small laugh, still catching his breath. "Why would you help a stranger in the middle of this storm?" Amina looked up at him and smiled faintly, brushing wet hair away from her face. "Because it's the right thing to do, sir. I couldn't just walk away." The man stared at her, clearly impressed by her sincerity. Most people would have walked past or asked for money, but she hadn't. She had helped without expecting anything in return. "What's your name?" he asked. "Amina," she replied simply. "I'm David," he said, extending his hand. "You're a remarkable young woman, Amina." She shook his hand shyly, her palm cold and trembling. "I'm just glad your car is fine," she said softly. David looked at her for a moment, noticing how thin and tired she looked. Her clothes were worn, her shoes broken, yet her eyes held warmth and quiet strength. He reached into his car, took out a card and handed it to her. "Come to my office tomorrow. I think I can help you," he said kindly. Amina stared at the card, unsure what to say. I don't know, sir. I don't want to be a bother." David smiled. "You're not a bother. You're someone who deserves a chance. Please, come." She nodded slowly, tucking the card into her pocket. "Thank you, sir." Before he got back into the car, David looked at her once more. "Make sure you get home safely. It's not safe to walk alone this late." Amina smiled again, clutching her old umbrella. "I'll be fine. Thank you." As the car drove off, splashing through puddles, Amina stood there for a moment under the rain, staring at the card in her hand. It had his name and the logo of a large company printed on it. She couldn't believe what had just happened. For a brief second, she felt like fate had turned toward her. When she finally reached the small shed she called home, she hung her wet clothes and sat quietly, thinking about the man she had met. Should I really go? She wondered. What if it's not real? But something deep inside her told her to trust her heart. The next morning she woke up early. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining under the soft morning light. Amina washed her face, brushed her hair, and wore her cleanest dress, a faded blue one she had carefully kept for special days. She held the card tightly as she walked toward the address written on it. The city streets were busy again, cars honking and people rushing to work. When she reached the large building, her heart raced. It was tall and shiny, made of glass and steel, the kind of place she had only seen from afar. She hesitated near the gate, feeling small and nervous. A guard stopped her gently. "Good morning, madam. Can I help you?" I'm here to see Mr. David," she said, holding up the card. The guard looked surprised but nodded after checking something. "Wait here for a moment." A few minutes later, a woman from inside came out and led Amina upstairs. Her hands shook slightly as the elevator doors opened. Everything around her was clean and bright, with people in suits walking quickly, carrying files and laptops. She felt completely out of place, but she reminded herself of her mother's words, "Walk with faith, not fear." When she entered the office, David was already waiting. He smiled warmly. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." Amina lowered her eyes respectfully. "I didn't want to waste your time, sir." David laughed softly. "You could never waste my time, Amina. Sit down, please." She sat carefully on the edge of the chair, unsure what to expect. He leaned forward. "Yesterday you helped me when you didn't have to. Most people would have walked away. I believe people like you, honest, selfless and strong, deserve a real chance. Amina's eyes widened slightly. A chance, sir? Yes, he nodded. I run a foundation that helps hardworking people start over. I want to offer you a job, something stable, something that can help you build a better future. Amina couldn't believe what she was hearing. Tears filled her eyes and her voice trembled as she said, Sir, I don't know what to say. I've prayed for an opportunity like this. Then this is your answer, David said gently. You've earned it, Amina. Not because you helped me, but because of who you are. Her hands shook as she whispered, Thank you, sir. I'll work hard, I promise. I'm sure you will, he replied with a smile. Now let's get you started. As Amina left his office later that morning, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time since losing her job, she felt hope blooming again, not because of luck but because of her kindness. She didn't yet realize that this meeting would change everything, not just her life but the lives of many others she would touch in the future. That night, as she lay in her small bed, she whispered a prayer of thanks. Thank you for sending help when I least expected it, she said softly. And somewhere she felt the universe smile back. The morning sun rose softly over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Amina stood outside the tall glass building, her hands trembling slightly as she held her small handbag. She had never worked in such a big company before. The clean walls, the shiny floors, the people in suits, it all felt like another world. For a moment she thought about turning back, afraid she didn't belong. But then she remembered David's kind eyes and his words, You deserve a chance. Taking a deep breath, she walked inside. The receptionist greeted her politely and directed her to the office where she would start. Her first job was simple, cleaning offices and hallways. It was something she already knew well, but this time she felt a sense of pride. She was starting over, not as a servant in someone's home, but as an employee with real hope for her future. Every day, Amina arrived early and left late. She scrubbed the floors until they shone, dusted tables with care, and made sure every corner looked perfect. People noticed her. She was quiet but respectful, always smiling even when she was tired. She greeted everyone with warmth, no matter who they were. David often passed by during his daily rounds. He would watch her work from a distance, noticing how focused she was. One day he approached her while she was polishing a desk. Amina, he said, you always do more than what's asked of you. Why? She looked up shyly and replied, Because, sir, if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well. He smiled at her answer. That day, David made a note to keep an eye on her progress. He saw potential in her, something special that went far beyond cleaning floors. Weeks turned into months. Amina continued to impress everyone with her work. One afternoon, the office was busy preparing for an important company event. Papers were everywhere and people were rushing around. The manager in charge was stressed, and when something went wrong with the setup, Amina quietly stepped in to help. She organized the tables, rearranged the chairs, and even helped prepare the presentation equipment. When the event began, everything ran smoothly because of her quick thinking. The manager was surprised. You did all this? He asked. Amina nodded, unsure if she had done the right thing. I just wanted to help, she said softly. Instead of scolding her, the manager smiled. You saved us today. After that, word spread through the company about the maid who fixed a big event. People started seeing her differently, not just as a cleaner but as someone smart, capable, and dependable. David heard about it too. The next morning he called her to his office. Amina walked in nervously, clutching her hands together. She had never been in his office before. It was large, filled with books, awards, and soft light from the big windows. Please sit, David said kindly. I've heard good things about you. Thank you, sir, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. He looked at her thoughtfully. You have a sharp mind, Amina. Have you ever thought about learning new skills? Amina hesitated. I've always wanted to, sir. But I couldn't afford school. David nodded. Then you'll learn here. I'll enroll you in our company's training program. You've earned it. Her eyes widened in shock. Me, sir? Are you sure? He chuckled. Very sure. You have something many people don't, dedication. Amina left his office that day with tears in her eyes. For the first time in her life, someone believed in her potential. She studied hard, attending every class after work. She learned how to use a computer, write reports, and manage schedules. Every evening she stayed late to practice what she had learned. The other employees started to respect her even more. They admired how she never gave up, even when things were difficult. Some even asked her for help with small office tasks. Slowly, she began assisting the team with organizing documents and managing files. Within a few months, David promoted her from cleaner to assistant. The news spread across the company and many were amazed. Some had doubted her, but she proved them wrong with her consistency and discipline. Amina worked harder than ever in her new position. She handled calls, arranged meetings, and made sure the office ran smoothly. She also kept learning, reading books about business and leadership. David often noticed her sitting in the break room during lunch, writing notes and studying quietly. One evening, after most employees had left, David passed by her desk and saw her still working. "Amina, it's late," he said gently. "You should rest." She looked up with a tired smile. "I'll rest after I finish this report, sir. I want it ready by morning." He shook his head, smiling. "You remind me of myself when I was younger," he said. Months passed and once again her hard work paid off. The company was facing a small crisis. Important files had gone missing just before an audit. Panic spread through the office. Amina calmly searched the records and organized everything. Within hours, she found the missing documents and presented them neatly. When David found out, he was impressed beyond words. "You've saved the company a lot of trouble," he said with a proud smile. Amina laughed softly. "It was nothing, sir. I just wanted to help." He looked at her seriously. "You've helped more than you know. You've saved me twice, once when I was stuck in the rain and now when my company was in trouble." She blushed, lowering her eyes. "I only did what was right." David nodded. "And that's what makes you special, Amina. You turned pain into power." Her heart swelled with gratitude. The same woman who had once been kicked out and humiliated now stood tall in a company where everyone respected her. She wasn't just an employee anymore. She was a symbol of strength, honesty, and hope. When she walked through the office, people greeted her with smiles and respect. She helped new workers, encouraged others, and never forgot where she came from. That evening, as she walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, Amina thought about her journey. From being falsely accused and thrown into the streets to earning her place in a company that valued her, it felt like a dream. She whispered to herself, "Maybe sometimes, losing everything helps you find what truly matters." And in that quiet moment, with the cool wind brushing her face, Amina smiled, not because life was perfect, but because she had finally learned the beauty of rising after falling. Years passed and the world around Amina changed, but so did she. The same woman who had once stood trembling in the rain, hungry and hopeless, was now walking through the grand doors of her own office building. Her name was written in gold on the glass wall outside. Amina Foundation, building hope, changing lives. She had come a long way from the days of cleaning floors and wiping tables. Through years of hard work, honesty, and courage, she had become one of the top managers in David's company. People admired her for her intelligence, her leadership, and most of all, her kindness. Even though she was powerful now, she never forgot where she came from. Every morning, she arrived early and greeted every worker with a smile. She talked to the cleaners and the guards the same way she talked to the executives. When someone was struggling, she noticed. She would quietly offer help, sometimes with money, sometimes with advice, sometimes just with kind words. "Don't give up," she would tell them. "If I could rise, so can you." Her office was filled with awards and certificates, but Amina never saw those as her real success. Her greatest pride came from the people she helped. She started a small program inside the company that gave training and jobs to women who had lost hope, women who had been accused unfairly, abandoned, or rejected just like she once was. One of those women, named Miriam, had been fired from her job as a nanny after being blamed for something she didn't do. When Amina heard her story, she smiled sadly. "I know exactly how that feels," she said, placing a hand on her shoulder. She gave Miriam a job in her foundation and helped her start a new life. Years later, Miriam became one of Amina's most trusted team members. Word about Amina's kindness spread across the city. People began to call her the angel of second chances. Journalists wrote about her story, the poor maid who rose to become a leader. Schools invited her to speak to students about never giving up. Every time she stood on a stage, Amina spoke in her calm, gentle voice. "I once slept in a market shed," she would say, "but I never stopped believing that I could be more." Your past does not define your future. Despite her busy life, Amina never forgot David, the man who gave her the first chance. He had grown older now and often told people how proud he was of her. "She's more than an employee to me," he once said. "She's proof that one act of kindness can change the world." One afternoon, while sorting old papers in her office, Amina found a faded photo. It was from the day she first started working at the company. She looked at the younger version of herself, thin and shy, holding a mop and wearing a borrowed uniform. A smile touched her lips and her eyes filled with tears. "You did it," she whispered to her old self. "You survived." Not long after that day, Amina decided to visit the place where her life had once fallen apart, the home of her former employers. She had not seen them since the day they threw her out. For years she had dreamed of this moment, but not out of anger. She didn't want revenge, she wanted peace. When she arrived, the house looked smaller than she remembered. The same tall gate, the same garden, but everything felt different. A middle-aged woman opened the door. It was Madame Grace, the woman who had accused her years ago. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Amina smiled politely. "Good afternoon, Madame Grace," she said softly. Grace's eyes widened in shock. "Amina? Is it really you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes, ma'am. It's me." Grace looked her up and down, Amina's elegant suit, her calm posture, and the confidence in her eyes. She couldn't believe it. The poor maid she had once shouted at was now a successful woman. "I came here to thank you," Amina said. "Thank me?" Grace asked in disbelief. "After everything I did?" Amina nodded gently. "If you hadn't thrown me out, I wouldn't have found my purpose. That pain pushed me to grow. So, thank you." Grace's eyes filled with tears. She lowered her head, ashamed. "I was wrong, Amina. I'm so sorry. I judged you without proof." Amina reached out and touched her hand kindly. "It's in the past. I forgave you a long time ago." Grace was speechless. She had expected anger, maybe bitterness, but not forgiveness. She stood frozen as Amina smiled one last time and turned to leave. Outside the gate, Amina paused and looked at the sky. The same sun that once burned her skin when she was homeless now shone warmly on her face. Life had come full circle. When she returned to her foundation that evening, the staff greeted her with respect and admiration. They were preparing for a big event, the launch of a new housing project for poor families. Amina had used her savings to build safe homes for widows, single mothers, and street children. As she stood before the crowd during the launch, she felt her heart swell with pride and gratitude. Reporters took photos, children cheered, and families cried tears of joy as they received their new house keys. Amina looked at them with a gentle smile. "This is what life is about," she said quietly. "Helping others find hope again." Later that night, she sat alone in her office, the lights of the city glowing outside her window. She thought about her journey, the betrayal, the hunger, the kindness of a stranger, the long hours of work, the second chances, and the peace she had finally found. Her phone buzzed with a message from David. "You've made me proud, Amina. You've changed lives." She smiled softly and replied, "You changed mine first, sir." As she put her phone down, she whispered a short prayer of thanks. "God, thank you for turning my pain into purpose. Thank you for every person who helped me and even those who hurt me. They all led me here." A soft breeze came through the open window, carrying the faint sound of laughter from the families outside. Amina closed her eyes and felt a deep peace in her heart. She had once been a poor maid thrown out into the streets, but now she was a woman who gave others a home, a job, and a reason to believe again. Her story became a legend, told in schools, shared on radio, and passed from one generation to another. People spoke her name with love and respect. She was living proof that no one is too broken to be rebuilt, that the darkest nights can lead to the brightest mornings, and that kindness and faith can turn any pain into power. Years later, when people looked at the tall building she had built, they didn't just see walls and roofs. They saw hope, love, and second chances. And at the heart of it all was Amina, the woman who forgave, who gave, and who never stopped believing in goodness. She often said to her workers, "Don't hate your past, it's the reason you're strong today." Her words became a guiding light for everyone who heard them. And as the sun set behind the city, casting golden light across the horizon, Amina stood by her window, smiling softly. Her life had once been broken, but now it shone brighter than ever, a reminder that sometimes, life's hardest tests lead to the most beautiful destinies. The end.